Okay, so Adam has decided that he's going to ask me a few questions. I don't know what the questions are, so I haven't had time to prepare. So he's going to go through them and then we'll see what we get.
Right, okay. So the first question, I think there's 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10.
Okay.
So if you get, you can come back to some if you want,
Okay.
because you haven't had a chance to look at them. So I'll try to just come up with some questions that might give you a bit of an insight into what's going on in the last couple of years, really. Right. So the first one I put was, when did you first suspect autism or something wasn't quite right with George in particular?
I'd say around their first birthday, because one thing that sticks out is when we took them to one of their NICU appointments, and they wouldn't sit still. So George was climbing all over the bed, all over the computer, all over him, and I said, they're like this all the time. They don't stop. They are literally like this all the time, and surely that's not normal for children of their age, for them to be on the go constantly. So it was probably around from their first birthday that I just felt like there was something not right.
Okay, and we obviously thought that was more prevalent in George than Matthew, even though at that time Matthew was on the pathway to being checked at the same time as George, but that's been halted and now that's back in the process. So George has his diagnosis, Matthew doesn't yet, but we don't know yet whether that's going to be the case about that yet. So right, what services do you think have proved useful in helping getting things in place or things moving in the right direction? The services of like official services or non-official services?
So definitely the main one is portage. When I was still seeing a health visitor, she got some people involved and they were just no use at all. And bearing in mind, from the day that George came home, because George came home before Matthew, I've had people here on such a regular basis, and some of them I got rid of almost straight away because I just knew that they weren't going to be help for us, until we met our portage worker a year ago. And not only has she been good with the boys and she's been good with me, but she's helped with like family fund, and she's helped with different appointments. For example, we are on a 5-year waiting list for a dentist because of the boys' additional needs, and she said at our last meeting a week ago that she was going to help us get the boys and us into a dentist.
And she should normally be gone right by now, normally.
Yeah, normally they probably say a few weeks. Well, we've been seeing her for just over a year. So by far she has been the most useful, the most helpful, the most friendly. I couldn't fault her at all, really.
Okay. So the next one I've put, which is a little bit probably easier for you to answer, and this is more in particular for George, because we're talking mainly about George because he already has his diagnosis. We will go into more depth with Matthew maybe when we get a bit further down the line with that. But what things do you think George enjoys doing the most? It's probably a difficult question to answer because he goes in between so many things. But what do you think his, maybe the top 5 things he enjoys doing the most?
So he likes being outside.
Would you say that's the top one that he wants to do?
Yeah, he wants to be outside all the time.
Why is that hard? Sorry to interrupt you, but why is that hard, him being outside?
Because he's a runner, and because...
And the danger awareness.
The problem is that no matter where you go, you've got to think ahead. You've got to think of, when you decide when you go in somewhere, you've got to think of exits. You've got to think of access in general. You've got to think of how busy it could get. whether you take the pram to strap him in to stop him running off. There's so many things you've got to think of, but being outside is definitely his top one. And then I'd say water, because he loves the bath. We've tried taking him swimming a couple of times, but although he loves the water, he gets out of the pool to run, so it proves quite difficult. So outside, water. He loves to eat. His favourite things.
Music.
Music, yeah, he likes music. But when I say music, most of the time it's the end credits or
The start
music,
films.
or the songs played in films that he likes. That's when you'll get him dancing the most. So food, water, outdoors, music, and just sensory, I think. He likes, even
Touching
with his
things.
lollipops, when he comes across something that he likes, it immediately goes up to his face or across his chest. And you can tell that he likes that. I mean, I might be completely wrong. That might not be something that an autistic child enjoys, but I think George likes to, not with all sensory things, because in nursery he didn't like the shaving foam or the corn flour. When they did it with the porridge, he just ate the porridge instead of playing with the oats. But I think sensory wise, he enjoys his sensory play.
Okay. So the next question was, at what stage on the pathway at the moment is Matthew, and do you think he's autistic?
Yes, I do think he's autistic. I think there's days where he just screams autism to me. So he should be being seen this month by the CDC.
Which is the Child Development Centre, just in case anyone doesn't know the acronyms.
So he should be being seen by them. But the professionals that we've spoken to so far, so the educational psychologist, the portage worker, I'm trying to think who else, they are all in agreement that, especially the educational psychologist actually, after she saw Matthew a couple of times, she said that to expect basically a diagnosis for Matthew, and I wouldn't be surprised at all. They're at completely different ends of the spectrum, but Matthew is autistic.
Okay.
In my opinion, because I know him best.
Until we have the medical opinion, obviously we can't say that's, but that's what we believe. That's why I'm asking you as a mum, do you think he is?
I believe it because a lot of people think that Matthew copies George's behaviour, but I don't think that's correct. I think that Matthew has a lot of his own autistic behaviour, and
which George doesn't have certain things.
Yeah, and doing the research and reading books and stuff, it is autistic behaviour. I would be extremely surprised if Matthew didn't have autism. Don't get me wrong, I think George's autism is more severe than Matthew's, mainly because of his speech and stuff, but I'd be really surprised if they said no.
Right, this one's probably a quick answer to this because we probably don't know the answer to this yet. Do you think either or both of them may become medicated or may be medicated in the future for their autism specifically? We don't, obviously at the moment they're not under no medication at all.
I don't think Matthew would. I think if anything Matthew would probably be put on something for his sleep, because his sleep's more disturbed than George's. I'd like to say no, just because the thought of them being medicated does make me feel a bit uncomfortable, but at the same time, I have said a few times, haven't I, that I wish George was on something just to slow him down a bit.
Okay.
Because he is non-stop.
Okay. This one is, I'm not really sure how you answer this myself. So, what could people do to help parents with autistic children?
Stop staring.
And I mean, in particular, I mean family, friends, or just strangers. What could they do to help parents of blatantly, or even if they're not blatant to some people, what could people, strangers do, or family or friends do to help parents with autistic children, do you think?
Okay, with strangers, stop staring, because the thing with autistic children is, it's a shame, isn't it? Because you can't walk around with a sign stuck to their head letting people know, and a lot of people just presume it's children having bad behaviour.
Would you prefer them to ask you?
Yes.
You wouldn't mind people to ask you, is he autistic? If someone thought they recognised and said, oh, well done, you're doing well, and you don't mind that, do you? Because some people have. There's been a few occasions where it's very few and far between. There's a couple of people, isn't there, when we've been out shopping and things, and they've said, well done, that's not easy, and things like that. And
well, you think I have mums at nursery who say, I don't know how you cope with it, and you're doing well to cope with it. And then I have other mums at nursery who stare, and I even had an old woman have a go at me once because George was having a meltdown. And then you'd go into Asda and some staff are really good with how the boys behave, and then I had a member of staff ask me why George was being so rude because he wasn't making eye contact. So I'd rather just, I mean, when you say, would you rather have people ask you, it's a bit difficult because most people just presume that it's bad behaviour. And obviously I can't stick a sign on their head, and I can't stick a sign on mine either. But just stop staring, because I've said it more frequently recently that I feel like a freak show wherever I go.
okay.
Because we don't fit the norm, and that applies to our families as well, that because we don't fit the norm, and we can't just go on normal days out, and we can't just do the normal run-of-the-mill family thing, you become very isolated, and it's not very nice.
Okay. Right, the next one. Again, this one here, if we can't answer, or we say this would be a good idea, for example, and it's already something that is available, let us know in the comments, or because it might be something we're not aware of. What services do you think aren't currently in place, which should be, or that could be made available to children with autism, or adults with autism, or parents of children with autism? Like, is there anything that you can think of that you think would help families with children with autism? Like, we've found out about a holiday place that do stuff through like a service where you can get a cheapened rate at a caravan place and things like that. But is there anything that you think that we might not have used yet, but that you think should be available, or isn't available at the moment, that you think should be?
I think respite for the family is a big one. I know you can get that a bit further down the line, but it's a whole, get a social worker involved and everything like that. I don't feel comfortable with that, but I certainly think that at this age, it is, regardless of the fact that I've got twins, I think any parent with a child of autism, it is extremely stressful, hard work, and there is not enough time or energy in the day to properly take care of yourself. So I think if there was a service that you could use just to get some respite, even if it was going away somewhere for the weekend as a family, but then having George going off doing his own activities, and just to give the parents a rest, because it is the hardest thing that I've ever done. So that for me really stands out.
We talked about the respite, didn't we, recently, but we know that that's probably something that maybe would be able to be used in the future when we get a bit further down the line. But so that's one thing you'd look to maybe.
Yeah, and the other
about.
thing is I follow the Friends and Family of charity for special children, and every time they have an event or a day, thing that you can attend, everyone that I've seen so far wouldn't be suitable for the boys. It's more for older children. So I think that they need to start catering for younger autistic children. Especially
as they go on about the early intervention is the massive, hugely important thing. Well, we got the early intervention with regard to the diagnosis at a young age compared to what some people are. But like you were saying, a lot of the stuff is catered for older people, and they're saying obviously when he goes to school in September, we've already got him into a special school which we know is going to cater for his needs. So hopefully we can start seeing some improvements in behaviour and language and things like that.
I just think places, you know, 20 years ago autism was not really known or acknowledged or whatever. It's very prominent now, and a lot of children have it. And I think more big companies, whether it's Soft Play or even, you know, the bigger places for days out and stuff, I think more places should be accommodating for autistic children. More supermarkets should have autistic sessions.
Maybe some training for the staff, because some of the staff have been really rude. Not just in the supermarket, but some shops, people are extremely rude. The staff have been to us.
Yeah, because I'd like to be able to go to, you know, I don't know, Peppa Pig Land, somewhere like that. I'd like to be able to go somewhere like that and feel comfortable, but we don't have that option, because every parent there is going to stare at you if the boys are having a meltdown and the staff don't know how to deal with it. I think it should be much more available to have autistic friendly sessions and days out, and there just aren't any, not that I've come across anyway.
Okay, so we've only got a few more. What do you or we have answered this before, what do you or we want for George in his life?
So when we had the meeting, the EHCP meeting, the final meeting, nobody had asked me that question before, so it kind of took me by surprise. And I asked for a minute to think, and they said, you know, we get the usual, like, we want them to be, everybody wants their child to get married and have kids and, you know, live independently and blah, blah. The main thing for me is, I always say, I want George to be able to learn the skills to make friendships and have good relationships. And when I say relationships, I don't mean girlfriends. I mean good relationships with people.
And be able to maintain them, wasn't it, what you said?
Yeah, and be able to maintain them, because George is, with everything that he's got going on, he's still a really lovely boy, and I just want him to be able to have the skills, learn the skills, to make friends, and just have, in general, just have good relationships with people.
Okay, and if we, just to add to that, they said that they were, not that we were trying to impress them, but they were extremely impressed with the answer when you gave them that, because they said mostly people just say, I want them to, you know, I want to get a job and, you know, live on their own and stuff like that.
To me, I don't think about him getting a job. I don't think about him living independently.
Well, he's only 4, so we got a long time.
A lot of people think ahead. I don't really do that. I just think of, when I picture when Matthew runs into nursery and straight away a lot of the kids like, hi Matthew, and he goes over and gets involved. George is very much do his own thing, and obviously he doesn't like talk or whatever, so it's harder for him, and I just want him to be happy and to be able to have friends.
Okay, so there's 2 more. What advice would you give parents or new parents that are finding out about autism and finding out that maybe their child's been diagnosed or they think there's a problem? What advice, obviously there's mountains of advice you could give to someone, but what would be the main bits of advice you'd give to a new mum that's just found out a kid's autistic, or she doesn't know anything about it and believes one of her children are autistic, or etc.? What bit of advice would you give them from your own experience?
I'd say it's okay to get upset. It's okay to be stressed. It's okay to struggle. Don't beat yourself up if you feel like you are struggling, because it is really hard work.
But also, I would say, as hard as that is hard work, the other day, what did George say to you for the first time, which was rewarding after the amount of days and days you put in hard work? And what did he say when he went to bed the other day for the first time?
Yeah, well, he'd had a really bad day, and I was upset. I was ready for bedtime, And then every day I tell them both that I love them before they go to bed. And then as Adam was taking them upstairs, George said, "Love you." And
he said it a couple of times, didn't he? He said it 2 or 3 times after that, though.
It's just moments like that. And I know that I probably won't hear that again, but at least I heard it that time.
Well, for a while anyway. He'll come back and say it at some point, but he loses words, as you've said before. He'll say something, and then we don't hear it for 6 months, and then he might say it the odd time again. But
the thing is, when giving advice to people, I can't say make sure you look after yourself, because I'm not doing that. Because I struggle a lot. I do struggle a lot. But I'd also say, if any of your family stick around, if any of your family are being supportive, really hold on to that.
And use them.
Use them, because as soon as the boys started showing any problems, I can't even say lost touch. So many people walked out of our life.
Friends, obviously, especially, mainly.
Yeah, so many people walked out of our life. And when you're a parent, and a parent to twins, and a parent to one with autism and one on the pathway to being diagnosed, that is a struggle in itself. So to have people walk away from you because you don't fit the norm, if you find somebody, even if you were to make friends with somebody at nursery or something like that, that supports you and just takes the boys as they come, really hold on to that, because that means a lot, that people don't run at the first sign of your autistic son having a meltdown.
Okay. And this one might be a little bit more happier. Asking like some difficult questions, I'm sure, because you didn't even read any of these, right? Honestly, you didn't read these, did you? I wrote them out. You didn't know anything about the questions, what they were going to be. And I put this one here. What one thing would be good? What one thing would be good for George to achieve in 2018? Obviously, we're only into May. What would you like, if there was one thing you could get him to achieve from now until the end of December? Obviously, we know he's going to be going to his new school. We know he's going to be going to his special school. But of all the things that he could achieve or get to grips with, what would you like, or what could you think would be a good thing for him to achieve, or a realistic thing for him to achieve before January? Because we've set goals, right, about certain things, certain stuff. We've set goals with him before.
I'd just like him to settle into his new school, mostly. Yeah. To me, that would be a big achievement, because at the moment he doesn't like going into nursery, and every single day is a meltdown getting into nursery.
Once he's there, he's happy, isn't he? That's so they say every day. They say he's been great.
Although they have been restraining him, but that's another matter. So, yeah, just to settle in his new school. That's the biggest. We had a long road to get him into the school, and now we're in it. I just want him to settle. I've got absolutely no doubts that he'll be absolutely fine. So,
that's 10 questions. Well done, because it's probably not easy questions to answer, and you've had a tiring day today, so now you're going to watch a bit of TV.
Cook you dinner.
Okay. So, we're done for now, and then hopefully the next one we'll have the boys on it. And
yeah, well, I've taken a couple of videos. I'm going to be putting them on the Facebook page.
So yeah, if you want to check the Facebook page, it's Autism Twins and Us, isn't it, on Facebook?
Yep.
And Amy's updating that with smaller, mainly phone clips and stuff, because it's catching them. Sometimes you don't have the time to get the camera out, or the time to catch them. No. So we're trying to catch them with that. Amy's using that. We're going to use the Instagram, which is the same. It's all on the YouTube, the bottom description, on the Facebook. The links are all on there. So if you can, like the video if you enjoyed watching that, some questions that we haven't done before, and subscribe to the page if you want to see more vlogs. And we're trying to get at least one in a week, at least, of something different, something them doing something.
Yep.
All right. So thanks for watching, and well done.